startup grind. So normally here at Startup Grind, we start with your upbringing. Like I mentioned, you're an international speaker coming from Botswana. Tell us, how was it growing up there? How was it growing up in Botswana?
I think Botswana is probably one of the most wonderful countries to grow up in. It's stable, there's no crime at that time. It's also a country, and I think it's very important for Black South Africans to appreciate it. It's a Black-run country economically. And I think that gave me significant psychological advantages growing up, because coming into South Africa, into a privileged girls' boarding school, and I've always been in multiracial schools, but where the majority of the country are Black people, but economically that's not the case. And it was a staggering thing for me to see, and to try and appreciate the struggle that so many Black people had gone through apartheid, and the damage that had done to so many families, societies, financially, economically, but also psychologically. And I was really lucky to grow up in a context where I grew up with no psychological damage from colonialism as such, or apartheid, or any of those things. So I think that gave me huge advantage, and I must thank Botswana for that.
Okay, great, amazing. Who here is from Botswana? Who's from Botswana here? Okay, your people don't support you. Anyway, and then did you also go to school there? Did you school there?
I started my primary school here, and then I came to finish my primary school here at Parktown at Rodin, and high school there, and then I went to UCT from there. So I spent most of my life here.
Okay, and then at UCT, what did you study?
I did a business science, computer science degree. So a mix of business and programming. Really good mix, I think. Very good. There were about 6 of us out of a stream of about 300 people that did that combination.
Wow.
So it's a very good mix. I think it stood me in good stead.
Is it safe for me to ask how many of those people were female or?
Very few. So I think we might have started with about 100 people in first year. I think in our honors year there were 40 people, and I think 6 women, and perhaps about 4 Black people graduated in my honors year.
Okay.
Am I doing something wrong?
I don't know.
Is it me?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Don't worry. Okay. And then that time, then after you left UCT, did you work, or did you then kickstart with your entrepreneurial journey, or were you in corporate first?
No. So as of Monday this week, I've had my first corporate experience of my life. So no, I hadn't had any exposure to corporations before. I think even before I went to university, I was already very clear that I felt something needed to change about my life. I remember, maybe I was about 14 years old when I started really reflecting, and always the first conscious conversations I think I had with myself. And I remember being really bored in a geography class in high school, and I was looking outside the window into the sunlight, trying to blind myself because I was so bored in that class. And that was the first time I asked myself the question, what the hell is this life thing, really, really about?
Yeah.
And am I supposed to keep playing these systems called primary school, and then now I'm high school, and then I was going to get to the bottom of another system called university, and then I was supposed to join another system called an organization, and I was just like, woo!
Too scary.
when you stop playing systems, and when you sort of start doing sort of me. And by the end of high school, I was already quite tired of the process, and I wanted to take a gap year and stay at home. But I've got very good, strong Black parents, and obviously that was a non-starter conversation. And to university I was to go, and I think for me that those 4 years was my final sort of time where I was prepared to do something because I was told to do it. And by the end of university, I was very, very clear that this is the end of my road on this path, and I needed to make a much more intentional choice about how I spent my time and what I gave my attention to. And to me, those are the most important values and assets I had. And if I could decide how I spent my time and what I gave my attention to, I was probably prepared to do anything. And then looking at the options available to me, it seemed like if I went and used my programming skills, I'd have to be a developer in a dev shop, or if I went the analyst route, I'd be sitting as a sort of an analyst in a management consulting company, and I wasn't going to be able to build the kind of stuff that I was interested in and do the kind of things that I thought were important. And that's when the journey sort of was very clear. By the 6 months leading up to the end of university, it was very sort of a trying time emotionally for me, because I knew I actually had to make this big decision, and I couldn't keep bumbling on this road that's called life, because that's what I was told to do. And if I didn't shift, if I didn't do something else, I was going to end up in a very, very unhappy place. Because I think when you grow up as a child, you kind of have this impression that the way the world works, the way it is, was kind of made that way by the adults, the parents, the smart people, the people that know better. Yeah. And if you just do what you're told and follow this line and be a good person, you'll get to this place where you are happy and successful and fulfilled. And I was really, really dubious about that life strategy. And I wanted to do something specifically for myself for the first time. And that was what entrepreneurship presented for me, an opportunity to do that.
But you were young then, and who introduced you to this entrepreneurship thing? Like, where did you get it from? Where was the first time when you like, okay, this is it, and this is what I want. This is what I want to do.
It wasn't quite as mechanical as that. It was really the realization that, oh my God, I haven't completed any job application forms, and we've got 6 months to go before the end of graduation. Yeah. And every time I try to fill in those forms, I would get to that section of, why do you think you're so fit and amazing for our company? And I was like, actually, I'm not. So this is a problem.
Yeah.
And then in my class, it emerged about a couple of other guys who were also not willing to go to corporate. And we just started talking to each other. What are we going to do so our parents don't kill us? And we thought, we might as well start something. And then it's like, okay, so what are we going to start? And that was, okay, that's a decision for meeting number 2. For now, we're deciding we're starting something.
Yeah.
And by meeting sort of number 2, we started toying around with this idea of, as students, we had never had enough money to make calls. This is 2005. Remember, prepaid calls were ridiculously more expensive than they are now. And smartphones were sort of emerging, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth were becoming more prevalent. So we thought there was an opportunity for mobile phone-based IP telephony or mobile VoIP, what is now experienced as sort of WhatsApp and Viber calls. But this is obviously back in 2005, if you can remember, a world before iPhone, before Android, where your smartest phones were your Nokia E-series and your horrible HTC Windows mobile phones, those things. Those were the smartest phones, and that's where we started developing on, and we thought we could do mobile web apps on that. So that in a place like ECT, why should we have to send each other please call me's? We should be able to make a call to each other from our mobile devices, and we just fundamentally believe that. So we thought, let's try and build something that can do that.
And how was that? The building of that company, I mean, I can imagine, did you have any resources? Did you have any funding from anywhere else? Or you bootstrapped, I believe?
For sure, we definitely did. So end of graduation, we gave each other big hugs and promised to be back by the 15th of Jan in Cape Town. And the 3 of us were all back, and we started, figuring out what this business will do. We needed to build a prototype, we needed to write a business plan, so we kind of all found a niche that we would sort of own and drive. I decided that I was never that great at coding. I didn't dream in ones and zeros, so I really didn't want to drive the R&D process, so I sort of took over everything else, and I started working on the business plan and reading and researching, and we literally taught ourselves everything that we needed to know about how do we build sort of mobile web apps on these devices, and how do we write these business plans, how do we devise these business models by searching on Google. And we taught ourselves everything, the most important things that we needed to know about how to start a business online, and we Googled our way forward.
Wow, that is fascinating. And looking at that now, what would you say you learned from you guys starting at an early age without much support? And back then I can imagine there was not also a lot of mentors that could come and hold your hand and say, this is how we do it, or this is how we do it properly. What have you learned?
There definitely mentors is a fun, fashionable thing you guys have come up with. I believe that the greatest form of mentorship there is in the world is to read. There's an extensive amount of information out there, and you can be an expert in anything you choose in the world today if you are willing to read. And the most important thing I think I learned was just how different that made us, that we were willing to search to the ends of the internet to find information. One piece of one statement that allowed us to figure the code that actually allowed the mobile VoIP to work at a time where no one else in South Africa had figured it out yet, and there was one company in Israel, one company in the UK that had actually been able to do that. And it was by literally mining forums, mining every ounce of information there. And so when I talk to entrepreneurs today who say they're passionate about something and they haven't looked past the first 10 results of a Google search about that industry, like there's your future. It's decided. And in the world today, there's no chance if you're not prepared to read and become an expert in that. And that has guided us tremendously, because I think I have learned to appreciate that whatever you're going through as an entrepreneur, whether you don't know how to hire someone or whether you're trying to craft a pricing or business model, whatever else, is everything you're thinking. Millions of other people have gone through this phase. And if you're not prepared to read, if you're not prepared to find out what they thought, you're starting 100 years back, which means you actually don't stand a chance.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Because a lot of people would say, or a lot of entrepreneurs would say, it's very difficult to retain good talent in the companies. How do you attract people that you really want to work with or you really want to bring into your business?
So I think because I've bootstrapped most of my businesses in Diego and certainly with the Kindle Learning, I've never had the opportunity to hire at the top end of the market. I really don't know what it looks like to hire a McKinsey person or what. It's never been an option for me. And I think the most important realization in the hiring and people management process is that as an entrepreneur, for years, you go through this stage where you believe that there are people and the people you hire will think like you. And until you can completely shatter that view of the world, you cannot understand how to develop and manage people, because you keep looking for yourself. Yeah. This person is going to be as passionate and do everything that you can do. And you can mix out and everything and do finance and the accounting and the marketing and the sales and whatever. And, no. Those people simply don't exist. And until you understand how to segment the roles in your organization, how you need to understand what the defining characteristic of the salesperson will be, what the defining characteristic of the programmer or the marketing person will be, and stop trying to hire for everything in one person, you can't actually begin to sort of build a team. And you need to appreciate that you are not going to find yourself. And as soon as you stop doing that and you start getting practical about not trying to hire 4 capacities in one role, then you can actually get a lot more realistic about what you can do and how you organize your business and which roles you prioritize sort of first that you're going to hire for. And then you also stop from this phase of constant disappointment and constant, chronic, well, these people can't do what I say. When you realize that you as an entrepreneur have a responsibility to unpack your business and structure it in a way that people can step in and out of a role without it sitting sort of all in your head. And if you haven't done the job of working on your business, not in it, but on your business and organizing it, you cannot begin to hire and develop people into the right roles. And that's a big jump, because especially if you're not an arrogant person, you kind of think, I'm not that great, so I must be able to find someone like me.
So all the structures must be in place.
It's primarily because you haven't separated in your mind how the roles and the structures of your company will work. So you keep on looking for too many things in one person. And learning to stop doing that was the most important thing in how I can hire and retain people.
Wow, that's amazing. I want to talk about Rekindle Learning. How did that come about?
So I started Rekindle about 2-3 years ago now, and after sort of 7 years in telecoms and tech, and it was a great journey, I wanted to do some stuff in learning. We had always wanted to do stuff, but we never had time in Diego. And I think it's very important for me to always do something that you are, as an entrepreneur or personally, are sort of authentically connected to. And I think that I've been stewing on that idea probably since sort of high school. Not that as I knew that would be a business, but I'd always questioned, even in my whole high school experience, the efficiency of what we were doing there. Because I mean, I would remember a lot of the time you would get these tests, you'd write a test and you get a test script back, and you would see the stuff that you got wrong, and you would tell yourself, I must come back and revise, oh, but we never did that anyway, and you would go on year to year, reinforcing your strengths and never really having the time to organize and focus sort of on your weaker areas. And I thought there should be a way to help us track and systemize that kind of thing, so that when you are going through these learning engagements, you can be guided to your weaker areas. You can reinforce those more than your strong areas until you actually sort of close some of those gaps. And that was my thinking behind using more smarter learning methodologies in tech, because I think the first generation of e-learning was really about digitizing content and taking your PDF manuals and your PowerPoint presentations and putting them on SharePoint or some shared drive, and you call that e-learning kind of thing. But it doesn't fundamentally change how you consume content, the rate at which you can assimilate information and apply it. And I really wanted to marry that sort of smarter tech with learning science and how we understand how the human mind works to retain information. So that was the first sort of then product I started then working with. I didn't want to spend a lot of money on R&D in the beginning because I didn't know the appetite and what was really relevant in the South African market. So over my years at Diego, I'd met an organization or a university in Austria that had actually developed something quite similar to what I wanted. It wasn't ideal, but they didn't have an Africa partner. They even haven't looked at Africa. So I essentially became the Africa partner and could then immediately start engaging with customers. So I didn't try and raise capital. I didn't try go to market. I wanted to engage and get real sort of customer feedback, because I believed that once I was in the market, I get a much better sense of, I know learning and skills is a problem. We don't need to look further than our newspapers and our economic outputs, but what really, really is a problem in that space. And I wanted to be in that environment where I could get more feedback around what's happening there. So it's been really cool using that platform, because it's essentially using a micro-learning methodology, which is all about breaking content into these smaller bites. It's adaptive and personalized, so it tracks the stuff you're getting wrong and right, and automatically brings you back to the stuff you were getting wrong until you sort of demonstrate that you retain that. And we've done some really cool work within companies and universities. So for example, with some of the smaller banks, they'll have a lot of young people that come from poor learning backgrounds that won't be able to master and pass the 300-page manual for FICA or the FSB phase exams or whatever. And if they don't actually pass that, they can't retain their jobs. So we take that kind of manual and we package it into these small bite-sized learning steps. And all you have to do is engage with questions and keep going, and the system kind of guides you to the end until you've actually reinforced the gaps that you have. And we've seen pass rates jump from after a face-to-face 2-day workshop to doing our thing, our micro-learning courses, from like 26% to pass rates in the 90s. Same content, different delivery mechanism, and it's critical for someone who isn't, it takes a very diligent learner to read something and to be able to self-assess whether they know it or not.
Okay.
And you need to have had very good education to actually do that for yourself. The reality is that most young people coming out of the education system in South Africa don't have that. So how do we use smarter learning methodologies to do that? So that's one of the things we'll do. And then with universities, we're also focusing a lot on English literacy or proficiency. So a lot of young people come to university where they speak English, but they don't read and write at the level required to consume tertiary content. So we've almost got like an online bridging program that you can do in your first year, maybe as part of your business communication or professional communications course, that covers a lot of the grounding and the language principles that you should have gotten in high school. But for learners who were taught English in Zulu or Setswana, it just never sort of came out that clearly. And we've got about, on average, about 6,000 learners that go through that a year from some of the universities of technology and the private colleges here. So those are the two sort of initiatives we've been pushing thus far.
Wow, interesting. We're going to talk about BCX because I know you joined them this week, right?
Yeah.
But before we do that, I just want to know if we have questions from the audience. Okay, yeah, just say your name and then give us the question. Murato should have the mic.
That's okay.
Yeah, I think I can hear.
Yeah.
Okay.
My name is Edzai. I'm from a company called Maths Genius from the education space. So I want to find out, first of all, to say you seem to have a good product, which is got adaptive learning and all that. How are you handling the idea that every other little startup that's coming out is throwing in buzzwords like adaptive, like this, but they don't actually add any value to learning. So how are you handling that? And then secondly, research shows that you learn outside the LMS more than inside the LMS. So you find that somebody will go on GitHub and get some code and actually learn, or they learn more on YouTube. I know these days there are protocols like XAPI, I don't know if you use it, learning record systems.
Yes, the tin can stuff.
Tin can, yes. So are you using that to actually see the learning journey of people beyond the LMS? Because I believe the LMS is not enough alone.
Sure.
Thank you.
So for the first question, there'll always be a lot of buzz in a market all the time. There's lots of sort of chaos going on. And I remember even at Jaeger, we were always in panic. Oh my God, another company is going to start mobile wave, because they always tell us they're going to. And in the entire 7 years we did Jaeger, we never met a company in South Africa that had launched a mobile wave product as either. So it's a lot of it I sort of shut down, but of course some will emerge. And my thing is just that it comes down to who will outlast, who is going to be here still in 2 years' time, or who's doing a fun fantasy project for 6 months, because there'll be lots of 3 to 6 month or 12 month sort of projects where people sound smart, have a bit of time, want to do something cool, and they do that for a while. I think I've learned sort of the ability to pick up when someone is doing an intellectual exercise versus someone who's in it to be in it. And I'm not particularly concerned by the ones that are playing, because I think it's in a couple of months it'll be done, and it's almost like a mental masturbation for them, and it'll be over. And I'm not actually concerned about them, because there's a lot of smart people who can do all the talk and start something, but I know from experience that to make anything significant happen, you need to be in a space where you're willing and wanting to commit years of your life to this. And not a lot of entrepreneurs realize that you need to align who you are with what the business is. And you think it can be this intellectual exercise that you do for a couple of while, but you won't last the 5 years, you won't last the 7 years to actually see it to the end and sort of make it a reality. So I guess I guess that's how I sort of gauge someone. And when I do see someone, I'm like, who I think can stand the test of time, then I actually listen. But for the vast majority, it's not always the biggest problem. The other aspect is that the need is significant in South Africa. There will be lots of players, and I don't think any one player can solve all of them. And for as long as the problem is so huge, I don't think that it's a one winner takes all market yet. It's going to be quite a while. It's far from a competition, because the need is so tremendous. And I think the more people there are, I learned to get comfortable with competition, because as soon as you got competition, you can actually then look at someone else's website and see how they articulated that and what they're doing. And instead of you coming up with all these solutions, you can be like, they did that, we can tweak that and do it. It's bliss. Having competitors is a beautiful thing. And they help you educate the market, they help you make noise, they help you move things forward. It's a good thing to have competitors.
Great. Do we have another question?
There was a second part of his question.
What was the second question?
It was the learning in the elements versus elements. Yes.
Yeah.
So I think what we're doing now is cool. And while we can do a lot of other stuff like tracking where people read and learning activities that they do outside of formal learning, I think then that would be cool. And we are bringing in some of that. We're not going to develop it ourselves. We'll use existing tools, and where a client wants that, we can plug in some stuff. So I'm very clear that our focus is on I'm going to follow in the corporate environment at least the trend of micro-learning, because I think that's where the biggest demand will be. And the other things I'll plug in from other people, again, which is why it's great to have other people in the market. I'll be like, hey, can I use you for X, Y, or Z, and plug in, and happy to do that kind of thing. But I think the next frontier of learning is that a lot of everything we're doing now with e-learning or even traditional training or education is still around shoving content into people's brains. And we haven't quite understood the next level of human development, which is around more mindset shifting and behavioral change. And that for me is where the biggest work and the biggest value in education tools will sort of come in, when we understand how to shift mindsets from a dependent mindset to an independent mindset, from an external locus of control to an internal locus of control, from people that are who can't act of their own accord to people that can exercise agency. And that's why I spend a lot of my research trying to understand if there's a methodology that can actually help us map that process out. Because that for me is the biggest and untapped area yet. While we can do some leadership programs and you can go to an INSEAD or a Harvard and they can solve it for 50 people in a room, we actually don't know how to solve that for millions of people. And that's the biggest burden on the continent now. And that's the learning that happens outside of knowledge. And knowledge actually isn't everything. And there's a couple of methodologies I've been reading about, one called sort of A to B, Human Development Framework. And they basically articulate an idea that instead of measuring, IQ or CVs or, your education level or whatever else is, we should be using a different concept of intelligence, which they coin occupational intelligence, which is your ability to respond to a task or challenge that faces you. And actually that's a basic human function, whether you're a parent or whether you're working in a company and in a job role or anything else in your life, your ability to respond is essentially saying is your highest form of intelligence. And they say that knowledge, your technical knowledge that you did at school, contributes only up to 20% of your ability to respond to a challenge. Wow. So our focus on education systems is largely sort of misplaced if you look at some of those other things. And they look at more your mindset elements, your locus of control, your agency, your dependency, whole brain function versus sort of single-sided brain function and things. So there's a whole other area of work there that is going to be outside of knowledge that I think will be the most important part in the future.
Great.
It's almost like you're taking my job.
Now you're taking my job. You were saying?
I'm saying it's almost like she read my book.
Oh, really? I think you listened to my talk.
Okay, do we have another question? Okay. Your name and your question?
I'm a communication consultant and a trainer. So I'm so glad that you're from Botswana. I'm the one who came the hardest.
Thank you.
I've spent some time training, capacity building training. In Aborana. So you were educated here, and I'm sure you agree with me that the beautiful young women of Botswana, they are in a little bubble in terms of opening the world and so on. How much do you feel sort of like responsible in terms of mentoring and opening that world? I mean, before Harry took Megan to Botswana, which put it on the flag, on the international flag, of course, I think there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of realizing that we live in a global village. So what are you doing for Botswana?
Sure. I haven't lived there since I was 12 or so, and I've started going back. It's not me, right?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Can't be you.
Over the last sort of couple of years, and we've got a couple of clients in Botswana that we're working with, for companies that we're working with, and we've tried to also engage with some public sector projects, but none have sort of really come through at this point. And I guess, my long-term belief is that I will be able to craft learning experiences on mobile devices that can address some of these mindset shifts at scale. I don't have that answer yet, but that's my long-term lifetime play. For now, what I do are these conversations, and for people that seek information. Again, this is not something that's been given to you if you are not seeking it. For people that seek it, then I'm keen and happy to be part of the conversation for them to help themselves on that journey. But yeah, I'm cognizant that's not enough, but yeah, this is my contribution. These conversations, and I think I've possibly done close on 100 this year already.
Wow. Do we have another question? Okay. Is that you, Silence?
Yeah.
Okay. Can't see properly.
Hello.
Hi.
My big question is, when you're in a journey into becoming something in life, there's always those challenges that you come across. My question to you is, what is the biggest challenge that you came across and you overcome? And what is your advice to young women? Because I stand for women empowerment.
Thank you.
And what is your advice to the young entrepreneurs or young men and women who are still in that path to becoming something in life? Thank you.
Sure. So the first question around the challenges. There are so many. I feel like my whole life has been a chronic challenge. But I've never stopped to think that it was a failure. And I think, there's a lot of things that you'll encounter. Funding, access to clients, growing your business. These have become so regular to me that I don't put them in a category called failure point or challenges as such. I think that's a privilege you guys have. It's emerged a whole lot more there. And the way I navigate sort of all of these things is that I fundamentally come from a place where I believe in abundance. And I believe that there is a way forward that doesn't cost anyone else anything for me to sort of move forward. And that there's value. I believe I can create value. And if this door shuts, I need to open another door. And the theory of abundance is that there is another door.
Absolutely.
So I simply wake up tomorrow and try again. And as disastrous as today was, the sun still rises tomorrow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when they say what's your failure point, to me failure happens if you then stop.
Yeah.
But I don't really stop. It's maybe I'll cry for 2 days, then it's right. What are we doing now? What are we shifting? How are we gonna sort of shift the market a bit? And I mean with Diego, we initially launched it as a consumer service, like your Skype.com, Jaeger.com type service, where we thought we'd be able to collect credit and money from people buying money, credit to sort of make out calls, like you make Skype out calls.
Yes.
Obviously, this was 2006, people didn't even load credit cards on their phones, so that was a sort of a complete dud. And we're like, all right, then which market can pay us? And we realized actually it's only probably the business market, that's used to EFTs and making some kind of online payments, perhaps at that stage. We need to move into the SME market. And it was like, what a bummer. But we need to shift our market. We could have said, okay, this fails, there's nothing to do here, and shut sort of down. But it was, there's another door. There must be another door. Because IP telephony will be a big thing, and we sort of hang on to that, and we shift if something doesn't work, so that we can find a context in which it can work. And as long as you're willing to, I think, keep that search going, then challenges come and go. And because I think from the 12-year journey I've had, I trust that time pushes past everything. There is no staggering defeat that time will not push past, and you just need to keep going.
Yeah.
So, the other question, what was it again? Did you ask another one?
No, he only asked one question, right?
No, there was another
You
one.
can't ask a lot of questions. You know how it goes.
Oh, the women. Advice for the women. Okay. Look,
yeah,
I think
you
my
can
advice for the
answer
women
it.
is, I don't know if it's necessarily different from the advice to the men, but I think when I look at the sort of the technology space and we say sort of women are not participating and whatever else is, I think a lot of it comes down to the same reason why we don't see a lot of African solutions at scale in the world today. And I believe that is because we haven't manifested our views of the world into products and made it happen for the rest of sort of the world to consume. And I say that because I think we don't trust enough, and perhaps women are more guilty of it, in the validity and the legitimacy of your worldview. Because if you think about it, software is simply an expression of your view of the world. It is a manifestation of how you believe the world should be. And if you haven't done the journey, the personal journey, to arrive at the point where you are willing to trust in the validity and the legitimacy of your worldview, then you cannot begin to be an entrepreneur, and you cannot begin to create a product. And if we look at the journey that way, and if we look at software that way, I think it becomes a lot more accessible. Women have been expressing their view of the world in fashion and cooking and all these other things for a long, long time. Software is simply a means of expression and one of the cheapest ways to express your view of the world today. And for women who want to enter the space, I think that's the perspective that you should look at it from. It's cheaper than trying to set up a manufacturing plant to manufacture clothes. And if you start from that journey point, if you look at the Airbnb guys, for example, these guys had the audacity to believe that you could put an air mattress in your lounge and people would pay to sleep there. They had the audacity to believe that that was a valid and legitimate way to view the world. And they built a business on that. My worldview is that that's the worst thing that you can do to a guest, right? But this is the whole point, that your journey has to relate to how you see the world and what your personal journey is, and they trusted that. So I often wonder how many entrepreneurs on this continent haven't taken that step. And this is why we don't see the manifestation of that view of the world. Because no one can do it for you. It's only something that you can give to yourself.
Great. Can we take another question? Okay. Do we have another question though, even though the mic is no longer working? We can still take some questions. Okay, no questions. Now let's talk about BCX ICT. Tell us, for somebody who doesn't know what it does, what you guys do, just give us an overview of BCX.
So yeah, as of this week, I've joined BCX with the enterprise subsidiary of Telkom, the biggest subsidiary there. And essentially, they've traditionally done your enterprise IT services, provided data, your data centers, connectivity, and all of that kind of jazz. And now, as most telecoms operators, voice and data are declining quite significantly, and one needs to look at new models, new revenue streams, new products and services that will be driving the revenue in future with. And essentially this role was the space to create and explore all of that kind of stuff. So from your AI to your cybersecurity to your data analytics and IoT and all of these things, essentially this digital role is to try and figure out what these next big bets are going to be for the African or South African context and for the African context, so that we can leverage the sort of huge client base, the huge resources and insights of people and assets that you have there to drive the business in that direction. So it's almost sort of lots of startups happening in a really big environment there. And yeah, so it's probably one of the only few roles I sort of would have considered. And it's also tackling essentially in that role how we work with startups who are going to bring some of those innovations to the table. Outside of education and skills that I've spoken to about, I think one of the other big issues outside of funding for tech startups is market access. And the rate of growth is highly constrained for most businesses today. And we're not seeing those billion-rand businesses coming out of South Africa and Africa frequently enough. And I don't think it's necessarily funding or skills or ideas, but because the cost of customer acquisition remains prohibitively high for most businesses to ever grow to that extent today. And so for me, it was also, in my own experiences, trying to get into corporate channels and sell through those existing customer bases, there's never really entrepreneurs on the other side of the table that can drive that and understand that. And as imperative as it is for startups to grow, it's now also imperative for corporates to understand how they can leverage those innovations and grow them into their own customer base. And I really wanted to be part of something where we can try and organize those market channels. Because without organizing those market channels and growth channels, most businesses simply will not exceed that 100 million rand turnover mark ever. And to make a difference, if we're going to see those gazelles or unicorns on this continent, we have to solve the market access issue fundamentally. And I think we need to do it differently to how it was done in the US and Europe and whatever else is, because look, for most parts in the US, if you've got a really cool app, you can be found on Google and the app stores, and the market is organized enough for you to have a channel to communicate and market to companies. It's organized enough for you to be able to collect money from your customers. It's organized enough for you to be able to deliver your products and services to your customers. So when I say market is fragmented, it is missing a lot of those elements, and that's the case for this continent. We've got these billions of consumers, but where do you find them? You can't actually access them at a rate that is profitable for a startup to do. So I think large organizations and corporations have a significant role to play in organizing those markets, and it is to their benefit as well. And yeah, luckily I think the CEO there has seen some of that need to shift how they engage with startups and innovative companies. And I think, yeah, trying to tackle that market access challenge is, for me, the biggest thing there.
And how did the relationship come about, basically?
So I moved to Joburg beginning of this year. I've been in Cape Town before that for 14 years. And finally I was ready for change.
Yeah.
And part of the other reason was Rekindle Learnings. Most of our clients were this side, and we were doing stuff in Botswana, and the travel was sort of killing me.
Yeah.
And then I've also been involved with Nisela Capital. So I mentioned that education. So I think I've had 3 pillars in my life, or 3 things I've been stewing on over the past sort of 5-7 years, and that is education and skills. Secondly, it's financial inclusion, specifically with respect to how we finance early stage tech startups going into the future. And thirdly, the market access question. And Rekindle Learning was there, and then Nisela Capital is a business I've been a non-executive for quite a few years, also started by a UCT friend of mine, and they traditionally do your financial advisory and starting a private equity fund and transactions there. So I wanted to get some more exposure to financial services so that I can understand that's where the money is in South Africa right now in private equity. To really just understand how it works, because I remember shutting my brain in finance too at varsity. So I thought, I've seen enough now that you need to sort of understand how the capital mechanism of the markets in South Africa work, and with ultimate aspiration that I would be able to do a tech fund at some point that works in the African context to actually address that financing and funding problem. And through those interactions, and so with Nisela Capital, we would engage with a lot of companies around our M&A transactions and whatever else, and we happened to engage with one of those conversations with Telkom, and that's where I met a number of the executives. And eventually, that transaction didn't necessarily happen, but they started having this conversation, which was quite a long shot. It took me hugely by surprise, and about sort of 6 months later, I was now open to the idea.
Wow.
And here we are.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Do you have a question?
No, we have a minute.
Oh my god, no! Okay, we have a minute. Does anyone have a question to ask her before we close? Before we close the... Okay, yeah, Boris?
Hi, my name's Maurice. With all the success and everything that you've been doing, how do you find balance in your life?
Okay, cool. I don't think my life is balanced. And I wasn't, when I left university, I wasn't looking for balance. I wanted to build, to create, and everything else to me seemed like a waste of time at the time. I think I will definitely get to a point, maybe in another sort of 5 or 8 years or something, where I might want to start a family or something, but I haven't gotten there yet. And to me, I think you can have balance throughout your life, but it's not something that I was trying to achieve concurrently. Now I am hungry to build, and I'm going to ride that for as long as that hunger is there.
Nice. Well, I'd actually, okay, I can't see. It's you again. No.
There was.
Oh, okay.
She was the other person who was asking.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, we'd just like to know what book are you reading and what books have really impacted you in your entrepreneurial journey?
Sure, quite a lot of books. I think I read a lot of Paul Graham's essays. He has a lot of essays on his website, Paul Graham. A very thoughtful entrepreneur around all issues related to tech entrepreneurship. Actual books of late that I've read: The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. I've also read Shoe Dog, Paul Knight of Nike. I'm reading Elon Musk's book, or not his book, the book about him. I'm reading. If I have my phone, I pull out my audio. So I actually don't read. I would say I do audiobooks. I actually can't finish books anymore. I listen to audiobooks in the car. So those would be a lot of the business books, but I read a lot of, sort of awareness, spiritual sort of, or personal journey kind of books. So I reread A New Earth every year. It's sort of at least, and a lot of Eckhart Tolle's books. I was in Sri Lanka for 2 weeks to learn more about Ayurvedic treatments and lifestyle, and they do a lot of writing similar to sort of the Eckhart Tolle's around peace of mind and awareness, and really managing yourself sort of better. The other sort of book in that space of late could be, I'm reading a book now called When Breath Becomes Air. I'm not sure if I said it. And it's about a neurosurgeon who's writing this book in the last few months of his life before he dies sort of from brain cancer, and what he learns about life at these crashing sort of final sort of months there. So I think I do enjoy a lot of personal life experiences, because I think I gain a lot from understanding other people's journey and how they've sort of seen the world. I really can't. I've got a shocking memory, so I can't remember what I did yesterday. I actually have to look at something, my calendar or my book list, to tell you.
Well, are you answered? Okay, good. Well, they say we have a minute. I think now we have minus.
Okay. No, she had a hand up before.
Who wants to ask the question? You've already asked the question, right?
No, she hasn't.
Why am I confusing you guys?
Presentation.
Okay, you can. This is the last question.
Yes.
All right.
Just because I'm nice.
You are nice. All right. So, for me, the last question I'd like to ask you, Rapelang, is what has been your one character about yourself that you feel is essential to overcome the challenges, everything about being an entrepreneur? What is that one characteristic about yourself that you feel has
yeah, one. Okay, maybe. I think the first thing is the capacity to self-validate. So when you are an entrepreneur, you're not in a company, you're not going to get a badge, you've done fabulous today. There's no performance appraisal, there's no pat on the back. And if you are going to build a business to satisfy your ego or your need for external validation, you're probably going to build that business in the wrong direction. And you need to get to a place where you are trusted that you are okay and that you are enough, and that then you don't need to build a business that serves and bolsters your ego. I think many people get stuck there, building businesses to prop their egos up, and it distracts you from the heart of the thing. It distracts you from managing people, because you need to then serve yourself the whole time, when the business is not about serving you, it's got no time for you. And finding that place to do that for yourself is one of the most important things I've been able to do, because then I can regulate myself, then I can manage myself, and then I can lead myself. And without that internal self-regulation mechanism, I think the journey becomes exponentially difficult. I think the other thing is the capacity to outlast. I continue to be staggered at how few people are left in the race 2 years on. And most people just stop showing up. And the capacity to outlast. I've never been the smartest person in the room, but I think I can outlast.
Wow. Okay, we just want to thank you so much for coming to Startup Grind Johannesburg. And I think from me and the team, we've learned so much. And from everyone who has attended today, they've learned so much from you.
Cool.
We really wish you all the best for the future. And is there anything else that you want to share with us that we can look out for, that you're going to be busy with in future, or?
What would be relevant to you guys? I mean, for anyone building businesses in cybersecurity, in IoT, in artificial intelligence and data analytics and things, when you get to a point where you've got a product and you've tested it in the real market and you're ready for scale, we definitely have through the whole BCX and Telkom network, the widest network of customers to get you into. So for scale, this is your pit stop.
Yeah, all right. Well, thank you so much, guys. Please give her a round of applause.